Good day, and welcome back to another one of these. My name is Jackson, and today we're talking about a team that I believe does not get spoken about enough, and that is the Detroit Pistons. Fun fact, that is my brother's favorite team, and another fun fact, they suck. They haven't been good for quite a while, but I do think, and this is a fairly unpopular opinion I've noticed, that they had a good offseason and that they've definitely positioned themselves to be able to attempt a very prosperous rebuild. And the reasons I think that is, whilst they did make a lot of confusing decisions during this offseason, such as trading Luke Kennard and having to add second-round picks to make it a reality, basically making no attempt to sign Wood, even though I do think that was probably more on Wood's side than Detroit's side. The trading for Dwayne Dedman to then stretch his contract. And I mean, the Mason Plumlee deal, it makes sense when you look at it at a certain point, but it's only at that very specific point when you look at it that it does make sense. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But the big thing that I do think that this Detroit Pistons team did so well was the draft. And I mean, if you think that they had a bad draft or you think that their whole offseason was crap, then you're definitely not paying attention to who they've drafted. Because I mean, just 2 out of the 3 that they did draft were probably absolute home runs. I mean, Killian Hayes isn't even a probably. I would guarantee that Killian Hayes would be one of the best players from this draft class. I think that he should have been a top 3. I think that he's a better point guard prospect than LaMelo. And I think that the Detroit Pistons have definitely gotten their star. And I don't know how long they're going to have Derrick Rose on the roster for. But even if they just keep him till the trade deadline, I think that'll be a lot of good quality time for Killian Hayes to be able to be mentored by Derrick Rose. And I mean, personally, I think that Detroit should move away from Derrick Rose as well as Blake Griffin, as a lot of teams have sort of perked the interest of these 2 players to bring them to their teams. And I think that would give you an opportunity to then get more assets, such as first-round picks, and then you can continue the rebuild, which is, I think, what they were really trying to go for, especially with the signing of Jeremy Grant, which definitely surprised me. I was expecting him to go to a contender, but I'm guessing he just wanted to get money, and completely fair enough. I do the exact same bloody thing. But I definitely think that this move was not a long-term move. They're not going to have Jeremy Grant on this roster. I would say they're going to trade him at the trade deadline. But that signing is definitely going to assist them in continuing this rebuild. And I think that the Mason Plumlee contract as well will also assist them in doing it, because it's one of those contracts that will basically act as contract filler for potentially a star, for potentially a lot of other players. And then you can also use it to get those sort of albatross contracts that a lot of teams have given out to guys like Al Horford and the like, where those teams generally have to trade off a first-round pick to get rid of them because of the production and then the size of the contract. So I think having Mason Plumlee make this amount of money will definitely help with contract filler when these teams try to move away from these overpaid players, and they'll attach a first-round pick or 2, and then you'll be able to continue this rebuild that I do think that Detroit are aiming at. I mean, when you go down the line, you got Derrick Rose, who I believe should go for at least a first-round pick. I mean, he's still an incredibly productive guard, one of the best. Does he play off the bench? He's just, if he does play off the bench, he's one of the best bench players in the league. He's still an absolute fan favorite. He's one of those players that, once fans are actually allowed back into the stadiums, he's someone that people as an individual want to go and see. Then you have Blake Griffin, who is fairly similar. He's not Blake Griffin of old, but he's still a productive, somewhat of a stretch 4. He can still be a little bit box office. He'll still bring in people to come in and watch the games. And then you're going to be able to get him away for most likely a first-round pick, I'd assume. A first-round pick and maybe another bit of an asset, because he still is a productive player that I'm sure contenders kind of the Houston Rockets could use, even though they did get Christian Wood. And I just think that this offseason that Detroit has had just doesn't get as much recognition as I think it should. Because yes, they did make weird decisions, but they won that draft. I think they had the best draft out of any team in the league. I mean, they got Sadiq Bey at 19. I think that he'll be a very strong player in this league. And then I believe it was Isaiah Stewart at 16, which was a little bit weird. It was the only pick that I was sort of looking at it being like, But he's still a quality player that I'm sure they'll be able to develop. And yeah, I just think that a lot of people need to not just look at it and say, why would you give Mason Plumlee that much money? It should be, what can you do with Mason Plumlee when he's making that much money? Or you think, why would Jeremy Grant go to Detroit? It'd be like, well, what can now Detroit do with Jeremy Grant as an asset? And then you can look at the younger players. And I mean, the one move that I do generally question is the Luke Kennard trade. It just doesn't make sense. Any way you look at it, he was a bit of a fan favorite there. He wasn't the greatest player in the world. He was a decent shooter, and he was a okay defender. But you'd think you'd want to keep him around, especially to pair him with Killian Hayes. I think that would have actually been a pretty decent tandem there for a young core to develop together. But anyway, I'll just leave it at that. I just want this is just a little short video that people will see, and they'll be able to sort of take this mentality to other teams, because you might think that a team had a really bad off season, but then you think, oh, well, what can they do with these pieces? Is there a market for these pieces? Because there is a market for a lot of these centers, because a lot of teams, since they've moved away from centers, are now desperately in need of a quality center, and guys like Mason Plumlee fill that role. So yeah, it's sort of like a little bit of a shake you up and wake you up type thing to make you think differently when you're sort of approaching these teams, to see like maybe it wasn't them just shitting the bed. But yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment if you feel like it, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.